Yes! Hello, everyone! Welcome to WAMCon!
Woo!
Woo! I am so excited to be here with all of you from all over the country, all over the world, and with Christina here. We are so excited. We have so many action-packed things to share with you over this weekend. So buckle your seatbelts. We couldn't be more thrilled to be here with all of you. But before we get things going, I want to turn it over to Christina for something that's super important to WIM. We want to talk about the land acknowledgement.
Hi, y'all. I'm Christina Ayala. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Education here at WAM. I'd like to start us off with our land acknowledgement. Women's Audio Mission recognizes that we are headquartered on unceded territory of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. Despite ongoing genocide and colonization, Indigenous communities have continued to make the San Francisco Bay Area their home. As guests, we at Women's Audio Mission recognize that we directly benefit from doing our work on their unceded ancestral homeland. It is also important to acknowledge that this conference is located on the ancestral lands of the Cherokee and Shawnee peoples, who were forcibly removed from their homelands and are fighting for state recognition and services to this day. WAM has connected with the Native American Indian Association of Tennessee, and we encourage you to read about and support their work in Nashville. The link for their website is in the chat now. Please take a moment to share the names of the Indigenous communities whose land you are occupying, as well as any organizations you are connected with. If you do not know whose land you are on, we're putting a link in the chat now. Click the link and enter your location to find out more. Please let us know in the chat. Before we begin, I'd love to tell you a little bit more about our programs, but I'm going to enlist the help of some of our colleagues.
Hi, my name is Terry Winston. I'm the Executive Director and Founder of Women's Audio Mission, and I'd just like to take a minute to consider all of the sounds we listen to every day. What did you listen to today? Music, the news, a film, games, sounds on your phone, all of the above? Now consider this. Less than 5% women and gender diverse individuals are creating and shaping all of those sounds, all of those messages that make up that constant soundtrack in our lives. Over 50% of the world's voices are not being heard. Over 50% are not being represented in the sounds we hear every day. This is what Women's Audio Mission has been focusing on in the trenches since 2003. We want women, girls, gender diverse individuals to be in the mix and creating that narrative.
So what does WAM's impact over the years look like? It looks like over 20,000 women, girls, gender expansive folks trained in music production and the recording arts. It looks like over 1,000 placements in careers at Dolby, Pixar, Sony, Google, Facebook, on tour with Tracy Chapman and Roseanne Cash, working on sound design for Harry Potter films. We've also connected engineers with projects with A-list artists, and we provide critical professional credits in our studios in San Francisco.
We train thousands of girls and gender-expansive youth every year as part of WAM's Girls on the Mic, a groundbreaking after-school training and mentoring program. We offer free music and media production classes and STEM training on a variety of topics such as podcasting, music recording, creating sounds with code, and building synthesizers.
And we do all this in the only professional recording studios in the world, built and run entirely by women and gender-expansive audio engineers. It's a magical place, a place where Toro y Moi and Kronos Quartet have recorded. And just before the pandemic, we had in Beyonce's band, the OGs. That was a great session and a rich experience for the WAM program graduates, our interns, and our engineers who supported it.
As many of you know, we have our adult training programs. We have classes in everything from electronics to studio recording to composition and live sound. We are so lucky we have our studio director, Marianne, teaching so many of these classes. She has recorded everyone from Whitney Houston to MC Hammer, so this is a great learning experience.
We also have a robust internship program, providing work experience both in our studios and as youth mentors in our Girls on the Mic program. Interns access networking and shadowing opportunities with companies like Dolby, Meyer Sound, and Outside Lands. Out of our program, we have placed over 1,000 women and gender expansive folks in careers at places like Pixar, Sony, Electronic Arts, Google, and Facebook.
Thanks to generous funders of our local Sirens recording residencies and concert series, WAM is able to commission new work, offer recording residencies in our studios, and performance opportunities that promote local BIPOC, female, and gender diverse artists to audiences of over 1,500 every year.
Which brings us to WAMCon, our National Recording Arts Conferences that we launched in 2017 to mobilize women and gender diverse folks in audio. We do this so we can bring the magic of WAM all over the country. We held conferences in New York, Los Angeles, Nashville, Boston, and even virtually. And we do this to celebrate the absolute best of the best women and gender diverse recording engineers, music producers, beat makers, songwriters, audio professionals in film and game, and to provide the best learning experience and the opportunity to be mentored by this amazing brain trust that we've assembled. We have so many ways that you can engage with Women's Audio Mission, and we really hope you'll join us in changing the face of sound.
Welcome to WAMCon.
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 Yes, welcome to WAMCon. Yeah, I get so excited. This panel is going to be so much fun that's coming up. But first, I want to see how y'all doing out there. Let's get that chat blowing up. How are we doing? How are we feeling? Are we feeling good? Are we ready to rock? Do we have our snacks and water and caffeine? I hope so. Anyway, I just cannot even express how excited I am to introduce this amazing panel. We have the top Nashville producers and engineers talking about what does it take to become an assistant engineer or how to become their assistant engineer. We could probably find out what that secret is. The collective genius and expertise tonight is awe-inspiring. So I'm just really pumped to share this with you. But a big welcome to, I'm going to go through these, I think in alphabetical order. So first up, Kazari Arai began her career as the assistant engineer to George Massenburg. And if you don't know who George Massenburg is, please look him up because this is a very rarefied lineage. He did create the parametric equalizer. So we have Kazari coming out of that. Also a producer engineer that has worked with artists such as Alicia Keys, Jack White, Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, and is also the general manager of George Massenburg Labs. So excited to have Kazari with us. And Gina Johnson, also a Nashville-based producer, recording and mix engineer, recently received her first Grammy this year for her work on Chris Stapleton's album Starting Over, and who was nominated in both 2021 and 2022, the first female to be nominated for Audio Engineer of the Year by the Academy of Country Music Awards. Gina has worked with everyone from Brandy Carlisle to Yola, Brittany Spencer, Lady Gaga on the Star is Born soundtrack, Jason Isbell, and so many others. Next up, we have Melissa Maddie, also an in-demand mix and recording engineer for a broad array of artists, including Van Hunt and Cam. By night, she's synthesist and composer for the electro-ambient trio Everyone Moves Away, and the rest of the time, she's handling keyboard chores and producing records for indie favorites Elliot Root. And last but definitely not least is Leslie Richter, also a Nashville-based recording engineer producer who started her career as a staff engineer at the acclaimed Ocean Way Studios in Nashville. And after Ocean Way, Leslie joined Ben Folds' team to bring his then private studio, the historic RCA Studio A, back to life. Her credits include Sheryl Crow, Winona, John Hyatt, Casey Musgraves, Jim Lauderdale, Ben Folds, Spoon, and many more. She also teaches audio engineering at Belmont University. So please give it up for our fantastic panelists. Get that chat going. Hi. Okay, I see. And there's Gina. Okay.
Hi.
We're a little worried. We're like, where's Gina? She made it.
I'm good. I was finding my AirPods.
No, it's all good. Welcome you all. Blow it up in the chat, everyone. Give them lots of love in the chat. I'm so excited to be here with y'all. I know I can spend, well, we've proven this. I can spend at least 5 hours with all of you. So we're going to try to keep it to an hour and a half and not 5 hours as we've done in the past. But I appreciate all of you and thank you for being here with us and sharing your experience, expertise, and everything. So are you all ready? You ready for some questions? I'm going to get the ball rolling, but we're just going to get the convo started. And we'll also be leaving some time at the end for questions from the audience. So I just wanted to start out first with kind of the beginnings of your audio journey. If you can share with us maybe some early moments in your career that you felt like, that really shaped my audio journey. I'm going to start with you, Leslie, just because you're to my, I guess, left.
Okay. You're talking about after I was actually in the studio, yeah?
You can go wherever you want. Like, what really resonated with you in a moment where you thought, oh, okay, I'm an audio engineer?
Ooh. Can you circle back around to me?
All right.
Can you rephrase the question?
You know what I'm going to say?
I don't know if I ever knew that, like, of anything else I could do.
Well, you know what? This is what I've learned, having moderated a lot of panels, is that audio engineers don't like to talk about themselves. So I do know this is a fact, but I will pry it out of you. I know I will. I'm going to go to Melissa then. If you don't want to go, we're going to circle back to you, Leslie, or you can just pop in there.
I guess I would say I was in my first year as an assistant engineer. I had moved to Nashville and started an internship at the Sound Kitchen Studios in Franklin. And at that time, there were 5 rooms going steady all the time. And so it kept us pretty busy. I would say there was a client that came in and I was put on the session. It was supposed to be, I think the tracks were done in a different studio and they came to the Sound Kitchen to do vocal overdubs. And it's for a big gospel family kind of tribute album that they were going to do with guest artists on there. And I only knew the name of the main artist in the project, and we were supposed to be doing vocals. And I got called into the session. I was like, okay, this is cool. I'm still, figuring things out as far as, how things are laid out in the studio, that kind of thing. And I was warned by the studio manager at the time that these people come in all the time. It's going to be like, go, 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 go. So you're going to be on your toes the entire time. It's like, I'm ready. And of course, it comes in and the client, I'm sure all of you have been in the situation where the client shows up and there's an entourage of people and they come in as a storm, basically, through the studio. They're throwing, that ADAT tapes at me, Pro Tools sessions, that kind of stuff. Make it all work now, kind of thing. I was like, okay, so this is basically trial by fire. This is going to make or break me this very second. I've never met these people. And within 5 minutes, here's a tall order of things to do. I set everything up. They said, okay, we're going to start with vocals. Okay, I said, I got 3 mics ready to go. I knew it was going to be a vocal session, 3 vocal chains. And then there's like, okay, cool. So let's pull up the main artist vocals. Like, oh, this is nice. Pull up the band on the console, and the engineer sits down and said, yeah, the guest artist is going to be here in about 15 minutes. So we wait 15, 30 minutes. And then a white and gold Cadillac pulls up to the studio. And who comes out? Miss Dolly Parton herself.
What?
And I was like, oh, it's going to be that kind of a session. And she comes in, heels maybe about this tall. So I'm like, I'm going to have to raise the microphone just a little bit for the heels. She comes in, she's a hoot. She sings her vocals, literally 15 minutes, done. She was awesome. And it's like, oh, next artist is going to come. Different song, pull up the session. And then who shows up? Vince Gill. And that's when I thought, wow, I've been here for maybe 3 months at the studio, and I think I've seen Nashville royalty in the last 15 minutes. Yeah. This is where I need to be. So for me, that was the beginning of okay, I'm ready for this. I'm ready for Nashville. I'm ready for the studio.
Dang, Melissa. Dang.
was insane.
That's it. I'm just in vicinity of you virtually thinking, yeah.
It doesn't get any better than that.
There's nothing better than that. You kind of nailed it. You all have a tall order to
Yes.
to live up to here after Melissa. Cosbury, do you want to jump in? Uh-oh, we were having some audio issues there.
Good?
There we go. Wait. I'm not sure are you there? Oh, yeah, we can't hear you though.
I got
muted.
triggered. I can go now. Thanks, Melissa.
I don't know what I'm gonna go to Gina and see if my crew backstage can help you out.
All right.
Gina, first I want to say congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow.
Holy
So
moly.
Grammy 2 ACM. I mean, come on.
Dude. I mean, it's honestly like sitting in this room with these other women. It's crazy to me, one, that the ACM, nomination never even had been given to a woman before. Like, I look up to these three women so much in this room, and what, I mean, I remember walking into RCA Studio A for the first time, and Leslie was sitting there fixing a Wurlitzer pedal, and I was like, I think I found the place I want to be all the
time.
So
sweet. I'm pretty sure I was lying on the ground.
I actually remember the scene very clearly. Walked in, Sorrel Brigman was taking me around studio, telling me different things, and I look in I guess we walked through the cartage hallway through the back, and you're sitting there, and you're like, dang it, dang it, dang it. And you're holding one piece and holding another piece. And then I kind of gave you a hand, and I was like, hey, I'm Gina, and I was a little gun shy because I was like, if these walls could talk, right? That studio is my all-time favorite studio. I'm so grateful that I even get to be able to work in there still. And, but yeah, that was definitely a moment where, I mean, you and Sorrel were the first women that I'd ever met doing professional audio, and I just kind of wanted to be around that. So thank you. I'm really excited for all of it, but it also just kind of amps me up more to work harder and to give back more, because our voices should be heard, and we're all out here doing it and hustling. And Leslie's giving back all the time. She's teaching, she's making records, and that's one of the biggest things that you can do, I think, is really give back when you do have some sort of a career platform of any sort. But I forgot the question, Terry. I'm so sorry.
You know what,
I'm so happy to see you guys.
You know why you forgot the question? Because there's so many moments. There's so many moments early in your career. No, what you kind of went there, but what moments early in your career were really shaped your audio journey? This is it. I'm doing it. I'm in. I'm on my audio journey. Just some definitive things that happened.
That's a really great question. There are so many, and I'm so grateful. And but I think when I was working at Welcome 1979. I was fixing tape machine consoles. I was assisting on sessions, and I had just kind of been hired to be their house assistant. And I worked with Gil Griffith from Waves Distro to make some extra money on the side for the weekend. I think it was an AES convention or something. And so I read up on distressors and fatsos and all these things to make sure if anybody asked me a question, I knew exactly what was going on. And, I think I even dressed in a business suit or something, because I was really wanting to impress people, which is totally not Nashville, but I guess whatever. So they were like, this would be, great if Michael Wagner showed up. And I'm thinking, I have no idea who Michael Wagner is, right? And this guy comes in, he has a crew of 5 people behind him. And, little me at the point, I had no idea who this guy was. So I'm pitching things to him, I'm oh, do you want, like, are you looking for anything in particular? Like, I didn't know that this was the guy that literally like mixed Metallica master puppets and, you know, produced like Ozzy Osbourne and Skid Row and Dokken and all these people. And so we had a really nice like 5-minute chat. And then he came back around and he gave me his business card and he's like, hey, I'm looking for a new assistant engineer. I'd love it if, you know, you'd come by the studio and maybe we can see if it's for you. And so, sorry, this thing's like falling out. Do you still have me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So anyways, then I emailed him the next day. You know, I'm like, hey, I'm the girl with the brown hair that you met yesterday. I don't know if you remember me, but I would absolutely love to come out and see your studio. So we go out there and we just like talked for like 4 hours straight. And then it was like, okay, I'd love for you to come and help me on sessions. And so then, I mean, I was extremely green at the time. And I remember like, you know, this epic producer engineer who was so kind would like sit down and we'd go to lunch and, you know, he would draw, you know, waveforms and lengths and do, you know, different measurements and get really geeky and be like, well, this is why you put the kick mic here, or this is why you would, you know, have this microphone do this. And he really like, you know, showed me the way. And then he was one of the first people that, you know, hired me as an engineer, like on his productions, which was really cool to be able to like be given that trust, you know? So, I mean, there were a lot of things, but I think like another time would be I get a call from Ben Folds. Leslie and I both have worked with him. He's amazing. And I get a call from his manager saying, hey, so, you know, Joe Costa, who has been Ben's, you know, engineer forever, he is on a different session. Ben's going to be in Chicago. We really would love for you to like go and engineer. I'm like, okay. So I'm like not knowing what this means. And it's about 4:30, I think, on a Friday or something. And he's touring with Y Music, the classical sextet out of New York. And I call his manager and I said, okay, what kind of setup? What are we doing? He goes, so we're going to record a song and he wants it to match the record. I was like, okay. So I'm thinking microphones, console, studio, what is there, you know? And I call Ralph, he was doing the rentals that time at Blackbird. And I was like, I have this situation, you know, do you have anything available? I know you're about to like close the doors. And he sent me with like, I mean, epic microphones, you know, like old tubes and everything to like match the sound. And I had to load them all up like in my backpack. And then I had the power supplies in a rolling suitcase. So like, and Ben goes, just bring a CD and like, you know, make a business card and like bring it with you. You'll be fine. Getting out of Nashville was fine, but getting back into Nashville from Chicago, they were like, okay, we're going to have to examine your backpack because it honestly looks like a bunch of bombs probably. So that was not a great thing, but you know, just having that trust from him. And I got there and unfortunately, like everything was like wired backwards and, you know, things like a room mic, all of a sudden the channel on the console just stops working. And, you know, and Ben was like really impressed with how I handled everything afterwards because it was kind of a shit show, but it ended up being good. And it kind of like showed me how much I can actually do. And it gave me a lot more like trust in myself and was like, okay, if I can take on that, I can really take on anything. So I think those are like a couple of examples. I have loads, but yeah, I'll just say that.
Well, those are excellent. And everybody's loving y'all in the chat. Just pass that on. I know the virtual thing's kind of sterile. You don't really get to see them go, woo, you know, but so I'm translating for you. So Kajri, I think we have audio for you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Woo!
Oh, sorry about that.
No worries.
So I met George when I was in college. He came in my last semester, and I had a privilege to do a session with him. And George Massenburg was my idol because I used to listen to Earth and Fire all the time. My school commute, an hour each way, was all Earth and Fire every day. So like when I saw his name, I was like, oh my gosh, I get to do session. So like, I'm gonna do my best and see if I can make any impressions. Ended up, I think I did. I don't know how I figured that
Well,
out,
you
but
obviously did, Harvey.
Yes.
but I little did I know he was building studio at the time. I moved to Nashville like 3 months after I graduated, and just hollered at George like, "Hey, I'm the girl that I shared a drink with, and if I could talk to you for a second." It's kind of similar to Dina's story a little bit. And he got on the call with me, and he goes, "So what do you want to do? You tell me what you want to do. I'll make it happen." And at the time, George still didn't tell me that he was building a studio. And then a few months goes, I don't hear back from him. And like, I think I need to, my time was ticking, and like, I need to move on. And then, so I asked him like, "Hey, do you mind if I put you as a reference?" And he's like, "You could put me as a reference, but you could also come work for me." So that was how I started. Like, why didn't you tell it like 4 months ago? But so that's the very first initial steps into the audio, like professional audio. And then the very first week, we talked, and George did something. I forget, but like he was very precise on like what he wanted to do and what he wanted me to do. So he said something, and I think I made a little face, and he goes, "Oh, she's gonna quit. She's gonna quit." He was teasing me, obviously. And then that's when I decided, I'm not gonna quit this gig until either he let me go or I can't no longer do it. And then 17 years later, I'm still doing work with him. So that's kind of my like moments where I remember early on. And then doing the gigs outside of Studio C was never a studio that you would think like everything was set up and ready to go. We would spend 12 hours setting up from mic pre's all the way up to, converters, microphones. So I had to build rigs all the time. So it was never a conventional studio in that way. But when we did, I was 6-7 months into my first year. We did a gig in Kentucky, and we were given it was at a school, and it was orchestral with Arlo Guthrie, and we were given the green room, which had like really bad power circuit, and I had to make something work, and I made it work. We made it work, and that's when I was like, I think I can do this as a professional job. So yeah, that's my very early on. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I'm telling you, so the chat, everything is extremely inspirational. And there's a thematic thing here. Leslie, I'm circling back to you, even though you're going to hate me, but I'm going to circle back to you anyway.
She's ready.
I would never hate you.
All right, but you might be annoyed, but I don't think.
No. I'll let you know. Yeah. So I remember at my internship, or maybe right after, I was sort of doing assisting sessions at the place I interned right after I graduated. It was this little demo studio. They made country demos. I didn't listen to country music. And kind of the assisting part of the gig was more like, you can sit in the studio, make sure all the mics work. And then, also mop the floor and all of the things. Just please put that down over there if you don't mind. My daughter just brought me dinner. That's so sweet. Thank you. See you later.
Hi, Lucy.
Bye.
So anyway, so I'm like in this like country demo studio with like wearing like really baggy cargo pants and a 9 Inch Nails t-shirt. And this one engineer used to come in, and he was like the one guy that would bring in sessions that were not country demos. And this one day in particular, he came in, he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, what do you mean, man? I'm working. And he goes, "No, what are you doing here? Like, you need to go and apply for a job at this other studio. You don't belong at this studio. And I thought he was just like kicking me out and firing me. He's like, no, you need to go apply for a job at this other studio. And I was totally like, Gina's talking about green, but like all you guys have your heroes or whatever. I'm really good at knowing how the song goes, but really bad at knowing like people's names and how important they are and, important places. I'm better now than I used to be. But he was like, yeah, they need somebody at Ocean Way. And I was like, and it was for client services. I'm like, well, I'm sitting in on sessions here. I don't know if I want to make coffee at Ocean Way. That sounds stupid. And then I went there and I was like, oh, this is a different level of being. And so, it was the scariest job interview I've ever had in my life. Not that I've had that many, but I remember they put me in the studio with this 96 channel VR, which I'd never seen in my life. I didn't learn on a Neve. And the chief tech at the time, who was like, the chief engineer, whatever, he came in the room and he said, okay, I'm going to give you 5 minutes in here with this console. And I'm going to come back and you're going to tell me everything you know about the console. And I was like shitting bricks, like, oh my God, what is going to happen? I'm never going to get this job, right? I'm like looking at the channel strip, like, I don't know what all these buttons mean. Like, what do they mean? I have no idea. And then he came back in, what seemed like, 20 minutes. It probably was longer than 5 minutes now that I have known him for a really long time, but like, it felt like forever. And he came back in and he says, can you tell me why there are 2 sets of faders? And I thought it was like a trick question. I was like, I thought you were going to ask me what like CO stood for and what does swap mean? What is it? He was like, why are there 2 sets of faders? And I was like, like to tape and from tape. And then he was like, what are the 3 heads on the tape machine? And I told him and he goes, okay, you know where the cockpit is. We can teach you how to fly. And like, that was it. And I was like, oh, okay. So then like I made coffee for a couple of months. There were 3 client services people at the time. And you had to sort of like work your way up the ladder. And so the one guy was like just about his turn to be assisting and like shadow people and like be, do the thing and be on the sessions. And he decided to go work at Criteria in Miami. And then the next guy like got put on a session. Well, the whole thing worked like you shadowed the existing assistant for a while, and then they shadowed you to make sure that like if any fires happened that they could put them out. And then you got to be on your own. The first time he was on his own, he like really screwed something up bad. Like we were on digital tape, I think, and he like aligned the machine wrong, or I calibrated the digital tape machine incorrectly. And we're talking like these were, really, really expensive sessions. Kind of like when Melissa worked at the Sound Kitchen. Budgets were still like huge, and people still spent a ton of money on records. And the tech came in and like tore him a new asshole and was like, this has to be right now. And dude just broke. He like broke and he like walked to the shop and threw his keys on the bench and walked out. And I had literally been there for these guys had been there for like an entire year. And I had been there for a couple of months. And the next day they were like, well, we need somebody on this session this weekend. Can you do it? And I was like, okay. And then it was like one of those things where we didn't mean to spend the night in the studio, but the artist was kind of eccentric, like an actor, doing the artist thing. And it turned into like, 48-hour days kind of thing. And I remember going home, like I came to the studio maybe 9 or 10 a.m. one day, and I went home the following day at like 5 p.m. just to shower and come back. And when I came back, I like laid down on the couch in the control room and like went to sleep because I was just waiting for everyone else to get back. And the next thing I remember was somebody shaking me and saying, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you punch us in? And I was sort of like, totally delirious and like found myself, like suddenly recording these people with 0 sleep. And I'm like, okay, no, it was not Jared Leto. Yeah. And it was like the artist had like run into some other artists in the elevator in his hotel and just brought them by to do hand claps and finger snaps. So it was all kind of like you're talking about, you have to be on your toes and you don't know who's going to come in and what's going to happen. It was sort of that kind of session. And that was sort of the moment I was like, okay, well, this is all right. I could probably do this. Yeah. And then it's always like, then it sort of really drives the point home and I'm sure you guys have all experienced this, when people that you used to work with and that you looked up to that were your mentors, like pick up the phone and call you for advice about something, and you're like, oh, okay, all right. So that's cool.
Well, people
That
are
didn't happen
loving the
immediately.
story.
That was like early.
No, but I think these stories are super important that people hear, because all your stories are really different, but they're also very similar, right? I think, to me, the things that stand out, and please chime in but this is what stands out to me. It's like you trained for this, and you kind of were thrown in the fire, and then it's how you handle the fire. Do you fold, or do you just like, that's it, I can't do it, or you all stuck it out, like you all stuck with it, like I'm prepared, I'm gonna do this. And then it's how you managed kind of that moment, and obviously made it into your next step towards success. So I appreciate you sharing all those, because it was really, I don't know, it's inspiring to me, and I know all of you. So, I mean, it's every time I learn something new from all of you, I'm like, oh, I didn't know they did that. So it's I don't know. I always love it. So now I'm going to kind of move into the territory. I know all of us have had this conversation together. We're trying to kind of identify the gaps that we're seeing right now, where people are having trouble advancing, like they get out of school and they don't know how to get into the place that you're in. And we're noticing it here too in our studios here in San Francisco, that there's some gaps, and we're going to try and gently identify things that we're seeing, like trends, I think, in hopes that we can give concrete things that you can do to eliminate the gap and get your foot in the door. That's the spirit of, I think, what we're trying to do here. So we all of us can go in all different directions, but that's the spirit we're going to go in. So let's start with what do you think are the really critical skills that each of you have? And let's like kind of riff off each other, because I know I've heard you all agree, and you all share these traits too. So this is what's going to be hard. One of you is going to say, it was like, oh, I was going to say that. But let's start with like what and you've kind of already identified some of it. What are some of the really critical skills? And they don't necessarily have to be technical. You can mix and match. But what skills do folks need to get their foot into these kind of large scale sessions in recording studios? I don't know if anyone wants to jump in first, or I will just start doing it.
Sure, I'll go first. I think I'm really good at, and I know all of us are on this call, is we're great at reading rooms. And so it's like figuring out what the energy level is. We can instantly tell, or at least speaking for myself, but I know we all can, speaking to all of us, is you can tell if there's something going on, or if there's tension between one person and another person. And it's like, okay, how do we neutralize this to get like the best possible product, and how to get the work done, because every project is an investment. And so if you look at it as like, okay, I am this person that, has to have these customer service skills, I have to deliver something. It's like kind of meeting people where they're at and helping them sometimes get out of it. Music really is therapy. It even is therapy for me as I'm working, but a lot of artists, like, they're writing about personal things. And so they want to feel comfortable in the room to share that and be able to be one-on-one, or, there might be a band they've never met before. One thing I make sure of before I start a record is like, get to know the artist. If I'm producing something, get to know the artist, and then be able to book musicians that are going to get along with this artist and kind of have, similar things in common, or just will be able to like really hear their music and deliver a good product. And then before we start tracking that day is like everybody kind of gets to know each other. So there's like a little hang time to get the energy right. And, I think that's a huge superpower. It's, it's empathy, really, is in one word to sum it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and riffing on that, that's something to kind of tie it to, like, let's say you have an internship. We have internships here. And I think when you're starting out, you're afraid, but you have to be that person that still welcomes people. Like the doorbell rings. how are you going to greet people? Even if you're afraid and you don't just open the door and just like shuffle them in. You're like, hi, my name's so, like the people skills part that you're touching upon, even though all of you have incredible technical skills, like incredible. What's the first thing that you bring up? It's like the energy in the room. Like that.
A lot of people have a lot of technical skills, but nobody wants you might not want to hang out with that person for 16 hours, And to what Gina said, the reading the room thing is super important, but you can't come in like guns a-blazing, like what Gina's saying now. Like as an intern or an assistant engineer, you don't start off like getting to know the artist and making people, like you make people comfortable in the ways that fit with what you're doing. Like Gina in particular is like a wizard at this. Like she would notice that someone got tea like 2 days in a row, and the next day tea would just magically appear for them. And like you would never see Gina. It would just be like she like would like pick up on these little things, and then just like it's done. It's already done. And people are like, remember that, like it that's just like a silly example, but it's for real,
And it makes a difference.
Totally makes a difference.
Huge difference. Love it. Love it.
Yeah, it's even like if you're an intern at the studio and, your job is to really help support the whole team. That doesn't mean just the artist, but like, hey, maybe the engineer, as engineers, we usually don't get even a chance to go to the bathroom, right? If the producer's, saying one thing, and then it's the artist next. And it's like, oh, can you make this edit? Or if we're in a Nashville session, it's like, hey, can you go from playlist 3 to 2 and, take the 2 bars before the, second chorus. And then you have like, it's like you're, taking orders at a restaurant and you're remembering these edits, and then they just walk away and you're opening a new session. So a lot of times the engineer, especially in a high intense session like that, like doesn't even get to get up and like get water. It's like, as an intern, see how your engineer takes their coffee, the producer, everybody, and make them feel welcome. It doesn't have to be about you. It's like the more you can do behind the scenes, the more you're actually gonna be felt and not like seen. And then like, oh wait, why was that so great? Like I actually feel taken care of,
Yeah. And if people don't notice that, then they're not the people you want to work with anyway.
Amen. Yeah.
I mean, really.
Yeah, it's like really just like even the smallest little thing, it's like noticing that the engineer is left-handed, so he wants his mouse on the left side, that kind of thing.
And remembering that the next time they come in.
Exactly. So it's always the very first impression you make, whether it's the second first impression when you meet them for the first time. And like you said, Leslie, they come back in the studio and they get to meet you again. And it's like, oh, the mouse is on the left side now. And the screen sizing is exactly the way I want it. And that's my favorite chair, because I don't like the blue chair. I want the red chair. Like little things like that just set the tone that they're being taken care of, and everything is secondary to that. I think it's the initial comfort level when you're sitting in the place that's not yours. I think it may be different in this environment where a lot of people are working in their own studios. But when you go somewhere else, at least for me, if I'm at a new studio or in a place that I'm not familiar with, I'm just sort of frazzled, like, oh, I had to remember where everything is. But if I have another person that's there guiding me through that, so I can just focus on my job, that makes all the difference to me.
One level up to, I was just gonna say, like the mouse thing, a lot of these places have Kensington balls, right? Track balls. I know you hate them.
I hate those.
But
I
like
love
when I was,
it.
working with like Vance Powell, for instance, like he is not an easy person to work with all the time, until you get to know him, and then like he knows your, your stuff. But like recalling his settings where it's like, okay, the left button is zoom, the right button is, whatever it is. And it's like, then he sits down and it's there.
Yeah.
It's probably the same thing, with George and whoever.
Yeah, for sure. Like this goes with the whole reading the room and socializing part of the skill, but it's the adaptability for me. And it's for everybody. As an engineer producer, you have to be able to adapt the situation. So if you get if you get frazzled by just a little bit of change, you might need to work on that before you come in session. If you are upset about somebody asking you to do something that's a little out of the ordinary, and then you find yourself getting really worked up, you might need to work on that first before you can touch microphones, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And because it's constant changes. For me, if I may just say, not to downplay on any educational stuff, but technical skill sets can come with your experience as you work more in the room. So come out of the school and say, bam, I have 100% Pro Tools certified, whatever. We don't care about that part. It's great that you know Pro Tools, but are you going to be able to touch Pro Tools in a real session? And if you do, are you able to operate it? Are you able to adapt to the situation? You can still shine through that difficult moment. Is really important. And that goes back into the whole story of being an internship. Be the team player and be able to read the room. It's really important.
Yeah, and I think you all...
What?
You can't get frazzled.
Oh, you can't. No. Or go to the bathroom and be frazzled and come back out if you have that moment. But
I remember like giving my resume, which is hilarious to even say, out of college to Chris Mara at Welcome 1979 when I wanted to intern there. And it was said like, you know, all the things that my teacher said to say, like Pro Tools, you know, proficient and certified. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, you know, I don't feel like I was certified until like in my own brain and skill set until I ran a real session and then pressed like return instead of 3 for punching in like an A-list bass player 3 times in a row. And I was like, okay, I'm never doing that again. You know, I mean, that's when you really learn. So it's like coming in thinking that, you know, it's like, it's the real life experience that gets you. And so it's like, if you can be a duck, you know, above water and everything else is going underneath and you're like thinking of things, that's going to be your number one.
Yeah. One thing that the theme, I'm going to pull the theme out here as best I can. And this to me, and this comes from our previous conversations too, but I think, you know, what you're all talking about is you're going to get this experience in your training somewhere, but it's vastly different when you walk into a commercial studio. That's something we've noticed here in our studio. Like, we're a commercial studio. People pay to come here. Like, we can't blow it or we lose a client. That's so different than school, you know? So that's such a different. And so I think just having the understanding that that's where you're at, like, I don't know how to be in a commercial studio, I think will help, because then you can say, okay, I'm going to soak this all up and watch how somebody adapts to problems or how do they troubleshoot. Just like, I mean, just to give an example, Kazri, we had a little issue with your audio. None of us had a meltdown and we laughed it off and we're back. No big deal. But there's people that would have a meltdown. That's where that's kind of the separation, right? Like, we had no meltdown. None of us.
But if one person melts down, then that causes another meltdown, and it becomes a snowball effect of like people losing their shit, and that's unnecessary, man. It's like
a lot of cold filtering going on.
I'm just thinking about somebody I know, so I'm sorry.
Ooh, tell us.
No, I'm not gonna tell that. I'll tell you guys later.
Okay, cool.
In the private chat later on.
But I will say that once stuff doesn't work like that in a high pressure situation, like it's super annoying when an intern or assistant or whoever is helping you on a session isn't fast and gives you excuses. And so like, it could really, really irk me that like, I got 2 mics on the electric guitar and I only have one of them. Why don't I have the other one? You were supposed to check this last night. And they're like taking 15 minutes to figure it out. And I've moved on. You know what I mean? I'm like, screw it. We'll just record with my mic. But because I'm not going to let that derail the moment. But you better believe after the session, I'm going to talk to them about it and maybe talk to the studio manager about it. Like, look, this person isn't ready. This person isn't ready to be on this level of session. So you got to like, even if you take care of stuff and you think, oh, cool, I didn't get fired, I didn't fail. Like, I mean, you might get it handed to you later. Like, don't think you're in the clear just yet, you know?
Because there's a reason you're putting 2 mics instead of just 1. You know, it's not satisfactory to like your sound or maybe the approach you're going to, you know, and there's a purpose for every single microphone. Maybe, you know, think about if there's 2 bass lines and you have a clean and a dirty and you're only getting the dirty and want to reamp it later because you're like, this was not the tone, but I didn't want to like totally derail the bass player. I'm going to do this, you know, like you can't do that anymore. And so it's, you know, sometimes there's not time, but yeah, it's like I always say like line check 3 times.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
The
Gina,
night before. Do not do it. Do
Yeah.
not wait until the morning.
Twice
of.
the night before, once the morning of, and
Yeah.
then every
Mhm.
single day when you start the session. You know, even if you've been on a session for 5 days and everything's worked, there are gremlins, people. Check that stuff.
I'm so glad you said that because our engineer here, Marianne, and I were having that conversation. Because we've learned that we now have to tell people when we say check that, we don't mean once. We mean like 10 times because we're going live and it can't, we don't have a second chance, you know? So it's like not once, 10 times. Like, and that nobody knows that. So I'm going to say that everybody out there, when we say test it, because when you do something once and it works, you're kind of like, oh, I did it. And you've never had the experience of it blowing up in your face, even though you did the same thing. And what do you do when that happens? Like they have to go through that. But anyway.
Yeah, I didn't mean to open a can of I didn't mean to scare your
No,
staff.
no, we're supposed to do that. That's the whole, that's the thing we're supposed to be doing, Leslie. You're doing the right thing. But we're getting a question about, and I think, you know, folks are wanting to know, how do we combat the learning curve from school to commercial? And I think internships are, I would like to talk about like I think each of you started in an internship of some variety, right? I know I did. I definitely, that's how I knew I didn't know what I was doing. So I was like, I certainly don't want somebody to pay me when I don't know what I'm doing, because this is pre-audio school, practically pre-electricity, but there was electricity, obviously, because video. So I think that's how we did it.
I could come at this from a little bit of a new educator's perspective, like, and as someone who has had interns, I'm sure you all have had interns. When I got out of school and after I'd worked for a few years, I was like, man, I only learned like maybe 25, 30% of what I know in school. And the rest came from experience and working with different clients. But then once I had an intern who didn't go to any kind of audio school, he like created his own program at some like state university. And I sent him to grab like a 57 out of the mic locker. And it was one of those, like, we got to get this set up. And he just looked at me like a deer in headlights. And I sort of realized at that moment, like, oh, wait, maybe I learned a little more than 30% in college. And I know that it's just like a 57 and maybe that guy should have just been fired. But like, what internships are supremely important, but I think that I'm trying to shift what I'm teaching these young people into like, you don't know when you're going to get the ball, but you got to be, whatever that ball is, like, you got to be prepared not to drop it. So I'm going to teach you, like, you know, I'm going to tell you how people are in real sessions. And I'm going to, like, you know, rail you when I've asked you this. I shouldn't have to tell you the same thing 4 times. If I'm having to explain something to you 4 times in a row, then you're already indicating to me that I would not have you in a session, because I should only have to tell you once. And I get that people don't really understand stuff, but if there's something you don't understand, write it down and ask later. Yeah. Like, don't just let it go and forget about it, you know? Yeah, I don't know. I didn't mean to.
That's exactly right. I think another thing that we've been doing here, and we're trying to do this more often, but this is something you can do, I think, for students to do on their own, is time yourself. We say, get in the studio and you have 5, I've done this, I've timed it, like 7 minutes, set up a mic, headphone feed in a different room and all that into Pro Tools, boom. And in 7 minutes. It's very rare that somebody can do that, and they don't know it, but we have to do that every day, right? So that should be step 1. Can you do that much quicker than you think? Because they'll be half hour later, I'll be like, there's 1 mic and we have no
right. And then they don't think about that on a macro. You may be able
don't
to
get to like,
yeah.
So I think that's something you could just do at home, like time yourself, like how fast can I get in, Pro Tools shortcuts, same thing, some basic time frame. I think we've all talked about, like, you've all had the sessions where it's like, Gina, I think you talked about, well, I don't want to pull that out. That's your story. But we've all had that story, that story, where he's like, okay, I'm going to leave and I want you to set this up.
Oh yeah, that was
And then
like,
you come back and you're like, oh, it's been an hour. Like, everything should be done.
oh yeah, that was horrifying. That was absolutely horrifying because the band was right behind us and he said it out loud, which, I don't think I would quite put that pressure on in the same way. I might leave that till afterwards, but what it did is it made me get really, really thick skin right away. The producer basically was like, figure it out. I'm leaving. I'll be back in a couple minutes and it better be working. And so then I have like this audience behind me, basically the band that like should be trusting me. And so, I think learning from that as well is like, I made it work, but it was more of like a communication thing where it was like, I didn't quite understand what he was asking. And when I figured out and sort of like wrote it down and looked at it, I was like, okay, I think this probably is what he means, so it would have been maybe more helpful to me to have him, like walk through it with me. But I don't think back on that and be mad because I'm also like, I was able to get really, really thick skin and it's hard to like, make me feel like awkward about anything, you know what I mean, now. And I'm glad for it because there are tough situations in studios and you have like, you can't get frazzled, like adaptivity is, Kazri was saying, and that's like the best word for being in a studio, I think, that and empathy.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes, but don't make the same mistake twice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
And also,
go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, especially if you're in school, like you make as many mistakes as you can. Don't act like you know anything because you don't. You really don't.
You're paying money to not get fired.
Yeah. Yeah. You are there to make many mistakes and you actually learn from it. So if your buddy's using like 121 on a guitar amp, don't just grab it and it's like, yeah, I'm using 121. Did you think about why it is 121, not 251? Stuff like that. Like, make that mistakes and learn from it. And even internship, you can make mistakes. Just own up to it because you're now in a professional environment. But you're still in a level where it's okay. Right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and internships are basically tests for people, that have studios or, you're an intern for a commercial studio and it's like they're basically watching you and how you interact with clients, how you interact with, the staff, everybody, and they're saying, would this be a good asset to my team? So then they are investing in you to hope that then you invest back into them. And so it's not just a waste of time.
Yeah.
And even if there's not a job there, it's a community. And if you have an intern and then you don't have a job for them, but they were good, you would recommend them to someone else who hasn't had a good intern and needs an assistant or you know what I mean? Like we talk with each other.
About it's a very small world.
It's a small world.
Small world it is. Truly. Melissa, do you have anything you want to add to that?
When I was an intern, like the main thing for me is that I came from an audio school. I came, like learning SSLs, tape machines, and all that kind of stuff. And I think when I started as an intern, the rule was you can be here, but almost not be seen until you've been called, because at this point you're really nobody. That you're allowed to walk down the hallways, you're allowed to answer the phone, but it's almost like the client doesn't know you're there unless they request you. I think when I was working at a bigger studio, we're talking about adaptability. I think I had an advantage because there were 6 rooms with 6 assistants, with 6 engineers and 6 producers happening at the same time. So I was able to go in one room and see how they work, go into another room and see how they work. shadow this one person, shadow the other person day in and day out. I think that's the most important thing to do, is collect information from as many environments as possible, because no two sessions are ever the same, ever.
Yeah.
You know, like one session could be completely calm. It could be a mixed session that's been going on for 6 months that you literally can just sit there on the couch doing nothing and the session will be fine. And then like the storm I was telling you about, where an entourage of 20 people come in and everybody wants something very specific. You got to be able to just jump on that and match that energy level, and then go back to the cool mix session without ever missing a beat. I think everybody needs to kind of get used to being able to change all the time. It's like, okay, I know what this session needs. I know what this session needs. And always keep that in the back of the mind, is their needs are more important than yours. Yes, I'm learning. I'm constantly just collecting things and filing them away for something else. You know, and filing the questions. And then when the session's done, everyone's left, but it's just the assistant there or just the assistant engineer, I'll come in and say, okay, what happened? How did you fix that? That's the time to ask the questions. And then I'll store that in the back of my mind for the next time that happens. I think with the internship, for me, it was very useful to be able to shadow people. I'm not sure what it's like these days, where you get very many opportunities to do that. But I feel like that could be a really valuable asset, to be able to just follow somebody for even a couple days or a couple sessions or an entire project. I think you can learn so much from there before you jump in and hit punch on Pro Tools.
Yeah, I think that's the shadowing piece, I think gets misunderstood quite a bit. Like the being quiet, like people, I think studios are typically really quiet and they're uncomfortable by the silence, but we need like all of you need the silence to be able to evaluate what's actually happening that you're recording, right? And so I think I've had people say to me like, oh, you're just silencing me. And it's like, well, no, we all have to be silent because we're listening to things. And so getting used to that, I think the shadowing part, like watching how people act, in a studio is really important, because it's really different than I think what you think happens like when your bedroom studio or in a non-professional studio. That shadowing piece was how I learned, I just stay quiet. I never say anything there. Or, hey, maybe like I've had people invite themselves to lunch. It's like, no, I don't even eat with the client. So no lunch. Right. like you have to learn. There's things that just don't happen. And that shadowing is how you learn. So I think maybe from a student level, like understanding what you're watching is important to like that. Oh, that's what I need to do. Or ask, why didn't you go to lunch? Oh, you just don't, unless even when they ask, I don't go. Anyway, that's a whole nother, let's not go there.
One more thing. I mean, I think especially these days, and it's real easy to feel like if you're not actively doing something, that means you can look at your phone or scroll, but like those things can't, like, you're not focused if you're doing that. It doesn't matter who texted you. Like you don't, just put it away, it's not time for that when things are going on. But I mean, I even did it like I used to get like really jaded, and I'll just be like, screw you. You're not taking any of my advice. I'll just sit over here in the corner and scroll the internet all day, because like, but like, it wasn't good. It wasn't a good thing for me to do. And now when people do that, I'm like, get it. You can do that outside. Like if you're going to like look at the internet, like go do it somewhere else out of my realm of space.
Yeah. Well, it's also, no, go ahead, Kazri.
Like when you turn around to ask for something, like let's switch the microphone, and I turn around and that person is sitting in there is on the phone or on the computer. Like I just stand up and just walk out of the room and do it on my own. Why would I have you? Yeah. So it's really bad look, even though.
Or is sleeping.
Or it's just not there when they're supposed to be there.
Sleeping.
I have like a photo album of like pictures that I did not get permission for of sleeping interns.
Whoa.
This is a trend for you?
No. Well,
Same
it's
time?
happened. It's probably happened 4 times.
Wow.
Yeah. Like 4 different people. And that's like, and it could be on a vocal session where I don't really need anything. And they're sitting in the back and the studio's super dark and they were up all night doing a setup or something like that. But it's like, so was I, and it's kind of like, do whatever you need to do. But yeah, it's like the phone thing. That's something that really irritates me too, because it's like, it makes, I think, the people feel like there's something like us or the client even like, obviously there's something more important than being here in this room. And I would give, an arm to be in a studio every day, and grateful that I get to be. And, that's something that that doesn't compute in my head. And, and maybe that's something that, wasn't talked about and, when they prepped for their internship, whoever hired them. But yeah, it's definitely, be present so you can learn. It's like I'm learning so much even just on this call, just like listening, to you guys and thinking about different situations. And I mean, look at how much, Melissa, like you learn from literally that one session. Back to back. It's like
whole Nashville showed up.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh. I hope I'm ready for this.
You probably kept your cool, like totally, because you do all the time. It's like, that's something to learn from,
Mm-hmm. Well, and then that anticipation piece, I think to test yourself, I've been trying to like see, like, if you're just sitting there and you're getting bored, well, think about, if I was Gina, what would I do next? Like if somebody's assisting you, you should be thinking, if I was the engineer, what would I do next? And I'm not seeing that, like, that active listening of like, this is what's happening and I need to, and as an engineer, you see your client, you're watching constantly all their body movement and you're like, oh, they're coming in. So you're already to the door, like you can see before they even get up that they're coming in. And I think when you're starting out, you have to learn to get to watch everything so that you can anticipate, like, having things prepared before the person, even knows that this happened. And I don't, I want, I think this is Alicia had this question about the digital world and is it reducing our ability to observe? I think you're right, Alicia. It might be.
I mean, the pandemic also didn't help, of course. And the thing is like, I think, social anxiety is like at an all-time high right now. And I mean, I know I have felt it, like being in rooms with, people. And I mean, one of my first sessions was at a studio in town and we were all being masked and, tested. But like the keyboard player comes in the control room, and it was a pretty small control room, and sneezes. And I literally just like, that was like my worst fear, right? This was June 2020.
Oh, wow.
And studios had just started sort of like opening, up a little bit, but like, with infrared lights and all this crazy stuff. And I just like stayed forward and I was like, oh, where are those molecules, like landing? And, and I said, and maybe it was kind of rude thinking back, but I was like, had huge anxiety, but I was like, treat a sneeze like a fart. Like if you're going to do it, go out of the room. Like it's going to be awkward. If it smells, like shit in here, like people are going to be like, who did it? It's the same thing for like a sneeze. So I think like, we're all coping in different ways, but just trying to like really look at it as a job and customer service. And like, are you getting paid to be on your phone? No. So it's like, you're getting paid to amplify the room and make it better. And like being, not heard and not seen, but like being a huge asset. Like I knew where all of the squeaks in the floor were at 79 when my intern there. Like I knew exactly where I could step to not let people know I was in the room. But like the engineer always had a water or a coffee or whatever,
Yeah.
You can't think you're better than some stuff, like better than doing stuff.
Oh yeah.
But it's kind of hard these days because it's like there's so many distractions, like you say, the phone, that sort of stuff. when I was coming up, you had to plug in your laptop to Ethernet to get internet, so there were no distractions. You had no choice but to stare at the back of someone's head and wait. I wish that would come back where it's like no phones in the studio. Put them right there. Don't open your laptop unless it's for work, and just listen, pay attention. I think that's really hard to do these days, with social anxiety and all this kind of stuff where you're constantly worried about being in a room with somebody. Just be calm. Everything will be fine.
Yeah.
But just the whole distraction thing, I've noticed more and more with, young producers or even engineers coming up, where they feel like they have to do a million things at once. They have to hustle. They have to know how to mix. They know how to engineer. Then they got to do that. It's like, well, okay, but are you going to be able to tell if the singer doesn't feel good that they can't sing right now? And how do you coax them out of that, or know where the boundary is, where it's like, you know what, we can call it a day because it's not going to happen right now. So I think that comes with experience, being in different sessions with different people. And I feel like maybe these days you don't have that many opportunities to do that, to be in a room with somebody or, an artist for a long amount of time to know, what the nuances are, what the personality is, what they need to do this and this and that.
I think something that helped me in like perspective too about like, because it's interesting to look back and, be like, okay, how did I feel when this happened? But not that I feel like there should be this big hierarchy in a studio, but if you think like intern is there to help the assistant is there to help the engineer, and the engineer is there to make what the producer wants, like vision, how it should sound, and the engineer's opinion is how it sounds, and the producer will talk to the engineer if they want something different. A lot of times, that person could be all one person, but if you think of it like that, it's like, okay, where could I move up to next? So like as an intern, if you get an assistant role, that's so awesome, right? Because what's next? You could potentially be a first engineer,
Right.
And so it's like, learn what the assistant is doing and whatever you can do to help them. And they're going to want, to help you, they're going to be like, oh, well, maybe this person could get so good they could fill in for me. Maybe I could have a day off once in a while. Like I remember having that community and feeling really grateful for it. And, just that kind of, I don't know if that helps at all, thinking about like roles and not being so confused about like the whole big picture.
So why don't we, we're going to shift this a little bit. We have some questions about, and I think this is bound to happen, but just kind of how to find work, I think. They're asking about how do you expand your clientele? Do you recommend social media, work for hire sites like Sound Better? I kind of know the answer, but do you guys want to weigh in on like how you expanded your clientele? How that worked for you?
These days, I could just get a random DM on Instagram because of a post I put up of a studio setup or a show I went to. And that's how the connection is made these days. Before that, it was just really word of mouth. I'm not the type to advertise because I feel that's like a little weird. I never put out an ad. I had business cards at one point, but out of the 5,000 I printed, I maybe gave out 3.
I want one of those.
Me too.
You go to Kinko's and get the big box of like nicely lettered whatever. But I wasted a lot of money on those and never used them. But these days, your calling card is social media or something like this sort of avenue where maybe people aren't aware and of what you do, except for what they see in pictures. I mean, obviously, some of us are very busy and don't like to post on social media that much. I don't think of it as advertising, but that seems to be the reality these days. And I never say no. If I see a question that comes in, I always answer. You know, sometimes we have a lot of things that we're doing. It's just, the person on the other line could be a potential client or a potential intern or assistant. And sometimes, you know, you just gotta cold call somebody to get the opportunity, just because we are not working in multi-room facilities anymore, where you get to see, you know, 20 people within an hour walking down the halls. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great advice.
That's
Anyone
kind of
else
the
wanna weigh
same,
in?
I think. I think that's the same for me. I mean, I've been, you know, thinking about working on a website for a long time, and I made one and I was like, I hate it. But, you know, because it just feels weird, right? And but it also is, you get past it and you're like, this is my business. This is what I'm doing every single day of my life. And so yeah, social media has been a giant connector for artists. And you know, during a session, I don't necessarily think about like, oh, I should post something right now. Like and then some days you know, I'll go forever and not post something. I'm like, man, I really should do this because of the result that comes through it. So, you know, I don't know, maybe there's a world where you like save pictures and do it on a day off or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
We all know this, but everything that we see on Instagram, social media, TikTok, whatever, are just highlights of everybody's life, right? They're highlighting the best part of that, whatever the moment they're living in right now. But it's also, we are also living with the social media kind of pretty much embedded into our life. So what I think you should use it to promote yourself. I have gotten gigs through, like Melissa said, I have gotten gigs from Instagram. But we're not doing for the grams. That's the fundamental
for the grams
things. Yes, for especially young people, young interns and assistants. They are taking pictures and uploading. Like, I'm in the studio. I know that excitement. I understand. I have been there. However, that's not why you're there. So if you want that part of it, like if you just want that part, just go do whatever influencer job. You don't need to be an audio engineer. You can book a studio and put up a microphone and say, hey, I'm recording.
Well, you know,
but work is what's not being seen and what's not being shared by us. The work, 90% of the work is there. So if you can remember that, why not use Instagram and, you know, websites and everything that you can. But you have to have a very good foundation of your music and creation, right? Creativity, I guess, to be able to promote yourself and go in and do that. Because we're all working from home. You know, we don't have the multi-million-dollar studios. So, yeah.
But you know, when I hear you, Gina, saying like, I should do that. We have here at WAM, you know, we have a studio and we have engineers and I know from being an engineer, like there is no way in hell I have time to take pictures. So I don't expect them to, like somebody else has to go do it. Like we send somebody over, like can you go over and try and get a photo of them in there? And even then we can barely get it because everybody's busy. So
for sure.
To all of your comments on that, it's really a weird, there's not really even a balance there. It's just like almost impossible to do. Like I know for us, when we put conferences on, everybody's like hustling when we do them in person, and to have that one person that's over there like taking all the photos and not doing any of the other work, like that's a bad look. We're all like, well, why do you get to go promote yourself on social media and I'm carrying all the sandwiches? Like, you know, like,
yeah,
why am I carrying the ice out right now? Like that's what it's going to be like, y'all. If you're in there doing the thing and everybody else around you is, you know, they're going to be mad at you. This is kind of common sense. So the balance, I think, of it is good. One thing I did also pick up on from Leslie that I think is important is the not saying no. And also from Melissa, like that you got back to people right away. You kind of don't say no. Like I've also seen folks be really like picky about their experiences, and I didn't have that. I don't think y'all had that either. Like, you just started one place that led to the next place, and we didn't really question it too much. It was just kind of like, I'm going for it. I don't know what that is, but I'm just gonna, because it will always lead to another thing. I think if you get really like, oh, I'm not gonna do that because of, I need to go to a birthday party or something. It's like, well, that's gone.
I say no now, but I didn't used to.
Now you can, but once once you're established, you can. But when you're starting out,
oh no, never say no.
Yeah, because there is always somebody that will say yes, and then you don't ever want them to be better than you and take your potential job. I mean, that was huge. I mean, the first 3 months that I was, well, like the first year I was in Nashville, I literally worked every day and didn't make a ton of money, but like I remember my parents, but I was just like psyched to be in a studio. My parents came to visit me like at the end of my internship, and I had gotten hired for a gig at the studio to assist on, and it was over Easter weekend or something, and they were coming in and they were like, yeah, so we'll go here, do brunch, whatever. And I barely got to see my parents. I remember the guy was like, well, are your parents gonna like be pissed at you if you, do something that you literally went to school for? And I was like, but it's my parents, and I'm not saying like don't have a healthy balance, but like when you're first starting out, like people will test you, and it's really like they want to know that you're gonna show up for them, because if you show up for them, they're gonna show up for you tenfold with gigs and and teaching you and taking the time, and they're investing a lot in you.
I agree.
To that point, you got to be really transparent with everyone else in your life, your partner, your parents, everyone else, everything about your life. Like, your people have to know that, like, look, I'm in this thing and this is not forever. This is just to get to the next point where then I can choose where I yeah.
No, that's a really important piece. Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody was done. I want to shift into, because we kind of had some questions about how the technical piece now. So let's talk about, if you were, let's say each one of you is going to hire an assistant, like what are those the very baseline technical skills that they have to have, or before you would even consider that person? And because I don't know that that's consistent in how people are trained these days. So they might not know, like, oh my God, I do have to know that. So I don't, if you could each kind of tag team on each other, like what is that? What are those core skills that they need to absolutely have?
I think for me, the very basic level is like, that this XLR cable goes into this microphone and that goes to the preamp, that part, right? That's like the most basic thing. And then just setting up a band, for example, in the live room. It's like, okay, so the drums are set up here, and usually, if there's a guitar player, bass player, just kind of location of how things are set up in the studio, I think that's important, because these are the things I don't want to spell out for an intern. So I expect when I'm saying I'm coming in for a session, it's a 4-piece band, this is my setup list. Thing, obviously, yes, we're using mic stands, microphones, that kind of stuff. I've been in sessions where I put in an input list and I show up and all the stands are still there in the corner. It's like, oh, when I sent you the input list, I mean, I want you to set it up, not when I arrive for us to set up together. So I think that's at the very basic level, to understand that that's part of your job, the most important part of the job.
And pay attention to those input lists, because, you really should come out of school with a solid fundamental knowledge of signal flow. You might not, like, it doesn't click for everyone at exactly the same time. And it's okay if it doesn't, if you're able to perform the task and then absorb information, like you all have said, just continue to oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. This always goes here. That must be important. Like, oh, this part goes after that part. Oh, I see. I remember learning that. You gotta, basic signal flow, problem solving for me.
Problem
Mhm.
solving.
Same problem solving.
Yeah, problem solving is huge. And like I'll speak to Melissa's comment because like Melissa sends I think some of the most detailed input lists I've ever seen. Like that's beautiful. I mean, everything to Pro Tools calibration and like, sample rate, everything, which, should be on there, but there's a lot of people that don't include that. And I remember a friend of mine assisted for her and I saw the input list sitting there and I was like, oh my gosh. And I totally stole your template. And I was like, I'm going to use
Awesome.
this and I'm going to make sure that I like have everything listed like this because it's so clear. There was like no confusion at all. And I was like, okay, I really want to meet this person. But yeah, like as an intern, just watching what the assistant is doing, getting ready for that assistant position. When you're there, you are expected to at least know the basic fundamental stuff. I mean, as an intern coming out of college too, but intern to assistant, that's really when you're like grinding your teeth on like even making sure that the cable isn't wrapped around the stand 100 times. So like if the engineer goes to move it, or if you want to grab a stand, like make sure everything's tight and not like overly tight where, somebody like me has a hard time, like, undoing the thing, whatever it's called. But actually like making sure that that microphone, whether it's a 57, an 87, 67 is safe. It's like thinking about even the way that a microphone stand is. A lot of has tripod, bases. Well, think about weight. Yeah, think about weight distribution, use sandbags and also there's like loads of things like that. And I think that you learn it through doing, but observing as an intern what the assistant is doing and then listening and watching what the engineer is doing when they're there. And also like critiques that the engineer gives the assistant, like learn from that.
Yeah.
I would say too, if you don't have the opportunity to be the intern and, and be around an assistant or to soak up that stuff, like if I'm recommended someone and, and I don't have any experience with them at all, and I call them to book them for a session that may be, 2 months out, like when it comes a week before the session, 3 days before the session, I don't need to be reaching out to them to give them my setup. You need to reach, don't be afraid to text or pick up the phone and call whoever the next person in the ladder is, like Gina said, to say, okay, what are we doing? Because, I might be busy doing all kinds of other stuff and totally like, I know I need to get you the setup, but I'm just like, whatever. If you call, it's going to put a fire under my ass. And it also tells me that you want to be prepared. And I appreciate that you want to be prepared. Do you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Assistants that also like with the email will attach like a PDF of all the microphones and the pre's and what headphone system they have. I mean, all of that stuff, or if there's anything weird at the studio. And like, I always ask, I say, cool. So is there anything wrong with the studio that needs to be fixed? Is there any gear that's not working? Oh no, everything's great. I get there and I have on my input list that it should be patched in a certain way. And they're like, oh yeah, that's not really working very well. Or like, the meter's not working, or, the output gain is kind of scratchy. Well, I asked you that question, so like either give me another option, but like we're trying to prepare before so we don't have to waste time when the client's there. And sometimes I can only show up morning of. And so we might have an hour together. I'm expecting all the mics are clicked out. I'm expecting like nothing is noisy, that there aren't any like hums anywhere, and that it's taken care of,
Yeah. And if you're an intern or a house assistant, you're basically the DNA of the studio, right? Your representation of the studio. So you got to know every single thing that's working, not working. This mic sounds better than this mic. There are two 57s, but one of them sounds like this, but one of them sounds like that. I think all those little things need to always be in the back of your mind, because yes, you are representing the business at that point. So I think it's important to make that impression that you know exactly what's going on at all times.
Yeah. Also, what buzz killer for me is it's not a technical thing, but it's a laziness. Check, mic check, line checks, all that stuff too. Mic stand, like if it's broken when you put the microphone on, why do you keep it on? You switch the mic stand. It's broken.
Common sense.
I mean, like common sense, but it's yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, that's so funny because one of my pet peeves is I think that one of the most learned or underrated skills is how to use mic stands. Everyone thinks they know how to use a freaking mic stand, and they do not. They don't know where the clutch is. They don't know counterbalance. They don't know how this telescoping boom works. Like, you should know every little tiny piece on that mic stand and be fast, because if you don't, you're going to be hella slow.
Or you could pinch your finger really bad,
or your toe, the counterweight on the toe. That's always
Yeah.
good.
Stand up into the counterweight. Boom.
Yeah. I've done that
yeah.
so many times. Permanent dent.
That's my pet peeve. Like when I walk in the studio, the first thing I look down and look at all the trip hazards all over the place. Cables are across the floor. They're not taped down. I hate that. And the counterbalance with I'm short. So usually I'm under all the overheads.
Me too.
But I'm assuming I always assume everyone's at least 3 inches taller than me. So I have to put the stands about this high. So it's overhead clearance for everybody. Like little things like that.
Yeah.
I have a question about favorite pieces of gear. What's essential for each of you?
Speakers.
Particular ones?
Yeah, I just bought these PMC 6.2s, and they're incredible. But
what you do with your old ones?
They're for sale with a sub. Anybody want to buy them? 228s with a sub.
Nice.
For me,
sorry to interrupt, but
go ahead. For me, a 414 goes a long, long way. Use it on anything, everything, all the time. Never gets old.
For those that don't know, that's an AKG C414.
Yes,
it is. It can go on everything. Leslie,
I'm a real big believer in guerrilla recording, meaning use what you got. So while I may have favorite things, I'll use what I got. But I mean, if I could have an M49, that would be pretty cool.
Ooh, yeah. Then you say that, and then we're like, okay, yeah, we need that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could pay my mortgage or get an M49.
Every month. That's always the predicament.
Kazri.
Well, I'm kind of with Leslie on that one, but I always bring GMO mic free.
Well, of course
of course I do, but it's
in your contract. You have to. Just kidding.
It's not on my contract. Okay? However, they're just the best sounding mic free out there. Well, in my opinion.
In your humble opinion.
Especially for like important things like vocals, I bring GMO mic free. And otherwise, I am going microphone to DAW straight most of the time, like 99% of the time. So I'm the easy one to set up for.
All right. Well, okay. I have about 10 minutes, so I have 2 questions I'm going to try to get in here, because somebody brought this up, and I hopefully we're not like beating this to death, but like I have my answer to this, but how do you, like, the high stress piece of this, how do you prepare for that, both mentally and physically? Like, do you have any tricks to kind of keep your cool?
I think for me, I'm always overly prepared because I'm Debbie Downer all the time. It's like everything that could go wrong will go wrong. So I have 3 backups for everything. But I, like you were saying, checking your setup, not 1 time, not 2 times, maybe 3 times, but definitely 10 times. That's me. Just go over everything over and over again. And once you have that, for me, I have that peace of mind, then that definitely brings the stress level for me, because I'm as prepared as I can be with the technical side of stuff. Obviously, things could happen. We're all human beings. There are gremlins in the machine. But at least what you have control over, which is your preparation for each session or whatever you're doing, is under your control. And then the rest, you can handle it if you know that you've done the best you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's really good, Melissa.
Melissa,
everyone's so quiet.
I'm curious, Melissa, after you sort of like didn't have to be at the sound kitchen anymore, when the first time you had a client that was like, oh, we'll just figure it out when we get there, like how did you adjust to that? Because I had a hard, I mean, I feel you, and it was,
I
had to let go a little bit, and it was not easy to just
go,
oh, just go with it.
I mean, I don't like those type of things. I hate having a big question mark over things. But yeah, there are definitely situations where it's like, yeah, I don't know. We might record a song. We might record 2 songs. There might be a band. There might just be a singer. That drives me completely insane. But I've gotten comments from people. It's like, I don't know how you're doing this right now. Maybe it's like I have a really good poker face. I could be just like crying inside. Like, I don't know how to get through this day. But never let it show on your face. You can run to the bathroom and cry it out there and come back and like nothing has happened. But yeah, I think it's a personality thing too. I think we all have our different ways of managing stress in the moment. Some people are good at that. Some people aren't. I mean, like what Kazuri has said, I've seen interns crying in front of a patch bay before. I've definitely seen that, where they don't know what's going on. They've been yelled at too many times that day because they messed up the coffee run or something. It's like, whatever it is, I know we're all handling a lot of different things, but don't let it show in the room. Whatever you need to do that. Don't ever let it show.
For me, it's like preparation is a must. Like, that's kind of without saying obvious, but some people have more in-depth preparation than the other. But for me, at the end of the day, like, I kind of had this like realization as I got older. It's like, well, at the end of the day, we're making music, so I don't think anybody's gonna die tomorrow. I'm hoping nobody's gonna die tomorrow in the studio. So I'm just gonna have fun and just see what happens. I'm kind of like, see what happens. If there are unknown factors in there, it's like, well, we'll see what happens.
You learn to adjust.
Yeah. I mean, my first 10 years of career was nothing but stress. So I did all that stuff not early on. So yeah.
Well, I think also once you put yourself, I think a lot of people are afraid. They think of stress as bad, where stress is just like how you stay out of trouble. I think of it as like, oh, well, stress helps me prepare. Like, you're stressed because you don't know how to do that thing. So maybe if you go do the thing, you won't be stressed. So I think some people kind of like try to shield themselves from the stress, where I think maybe throw yourself into the stress and then you can handle it. You all said that at least once tonight, where you're like, oh, and then I found out I could handle it.
Yeah.
And then you start to see, like, I can say to myself, well, I'm worried about that, but you always get through it. So just, you'll be fine.
I think in the moment when like sometimes stress is just like comes up by, surprise, like some things are going great and then suddenly they're not for whatever reason. And I think that, your tone of voice when you're responding to people, even if you're like freaking out on the inside, if you like are just talking calmly, that goes a long way. Like, yep, I'm working on it. I'm working it out. I'm working, like, just keep it chill. Like, it goes a long way.
Yeah. I think also like learning self-confidence, even if you at a point where you don't feel like you should be very confident because you're still kind of figuring it out. you know, if you're telling yourself I can do this and I believe in myself, and I know that's like, you know, such like a mom thing to say to like a 2-year-old or something, but like it's true. I mean, I remember, I still to this day I find myself in challenging situations, and like, you know, certain people I've worked with that have been super high stress where I don't get a setup the day before, you know, working under producers for years where you do a setup the night before, get it perfect for, you know, you're setting up for 4 hours and they call you 5 minutes before they walk in the door, and all of a sudden they want the drums not in the drum booth anymore and they want it out on the floor. And then they walk through the door and be like, actually, no, I do want it in the drum booth, I think. But, you know, and it's like that whole thing. And that was really stressful at first. And then I was like, okay, but also I got this. And this person is probably doing this out of being stressed about maybe a situation. So how can I just stay calm and cool and collected and positive, you know, saying like, no problem, I got it, you know, things like that, instead of like, well, but you told me you wanted it this way.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not helping the situation.
No.
Like, don't take anything personal. That's the biggest thing too, is like sometimes we're just running really fast and we got to do our thing. And so we may not always ask please or thank you until later on, you know, be like, hey, great work today, thank you so much. But it may not be like, can you please go get the 57 out of the cabinet,
Right.
the one that isn't broken, and the cable, and you know, it's staying positive and being sort of a light in the room, you know, be able to be counted on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it's that piece, that positivity, but kind of like you make it look so easy that they don't notice it. In some ways, it's when you're not noticed, that's a good day. Like it went so well, it was so easy that they don't even know how hard it was. I always think of like, that's a success. That was on fire and they didn't know. And, you know, we were almost like completely freaked out and they don't know. And we faked it because we had to get through it. Because, you know, if you have that, I'm sure you have all been through this where you have the person that's like the engineer that's like complaining about everything. Like, oh my God, I got to plug this in. And this is like, if I have to change that mic, it's going to be like, and like, who's going to want to work with that? You know, it's so, I mean, I think everything that you're saying is so absolutely needed to get people. It's hard enough for artists, you know.
And then remember too, like, I just want to reiterate Leslie's point from before, like, if you don't get the gig somewhere that you invested your time in, like, there's other places. And I remember even, I mean, when I started working at RCA, when Ben Folds was there, it was like, there were clients that I worked with that I got a call 2 or 3 years later that were like, oh, remember that girl that was at RCA that did a great job? Let's call her and see if she'd be willing to go over to Blackbird with us or wherever, you know? And they're like, I don't know if you remember me, but like it can happen at any time. So don't get down on yourself and just like keep doing the work. And if you show up for yourself, like things will happen, you know?
Yeah.
Also, don't beat yourself up if you like, I'm totally guilty of falling into the trap of not being a positive force in the room. And it happens. We're all human. If you find yourself there, if somebody else calls you out, check yourself. Don't get defensive. Just check yourself. I got to check myself. It was like a drag to be around for a minute. And, you know, I make a conscious effort not to be that way because we're all human, man. But if you find that like, you know, you were a drag in a particular situation, maybe don't be afraid 3 years later to call them up and be like, hey man, if I brought you down that one time, I'm real sorry, you know, or whatever.
Yeah. It makes people human. And just like also realizing, hey, we're all humans, like whether we're 80, 20, 15, you know, 35, doesn't matter. Like everybody's on a different path and we may be, you know, at a lot of different places emotionally and in our emotional maturity or whatever, but it's like, always know that there's something's happening with somebody, and just, you know, try not to make their life harder. Try to be like a, you know, a person that's supportive.
Yep.
Okay, I have 1 minute. This is the speed round of one each of you. What's your parting wisdom Anything, any parting wisdom for them?
I read a quote just earlier this week that says something along the lines of, if you think you can't or you think you can, you're right. I like that.
I like that a lot.
Good one.
So that was like 5 seconds.
Melissa's got all the wisdom tonight.
I know.
I know.
I want to sign up for your podcast.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I just read a lot of horoscope stuff every day. I get all this stuff from that.
Okay, so I got to
love
do my
it.
horoscope.
Really into the
That's what I learned.
stars.
Horoscope
Yeah.
is next. Anyone else?
I mean, somebody told me once, don't have a plan B, which I thought was really interesting. But it's kind of like if you only have a plan A and that's your plan, and you're going to be successful, like, because you're going to do whatever you can to get that, you know?
I
Yeah.
like that one too. Again, you guys are just, wisdom's just pouring out of you.
Well, I'll see you one from my boss. Think as hard as you can and double it. And he told me that once, and I had no idea what he meant. I now do. I know what he means.
And that you get to learn every single day in this job. And that's the best freaking part about it. You never stop learning.
I love it. Leslie?
I'll also steal one that I can't take credit for, but in a workshop that I was in last year, the speaker said, if your center is focused, as long as you keep your center focused, then it's okay if the edges are fuzzy. Like, you can figure out the edges as long as you keep the center focused. And so I think that speaks to what all of these ladies said, like, no plan B, like, you're going to have to think about these things, all the, it's,
I love words of wisdom from the very
I love you all
beginning.
so much. It's been awesome.
I love all of you.
know.
I was so excited. I was like, this is such the highlight for me. And I just want to thank you all for, your generosity of spirit and time and energy. We appreciate you. You're getting there's people, they want your podcast, they want your input list, they want to come live at your house. I don't know. It's like, it just keeps coming. The love just keeps coming. But, thank you all so much. And some of you will be returning tomorrow for more technical wisdom tomorrow, which I'm really
potentially technical wisdom.
Okay, well, but I think so. I think that's and I want to give a shout out. I don't remember the name of the person. There's somebody that's putting all the quotes in here. A couple of people.
Is it okay to be old and do this? Those ones?
No, just they're quoting each person, which I just love.
It is
the little quotes. Whoever was doing that, I appreciate you. I think that's really,
awesome.
I don't know. I just was enjoying it. It's awesome that you do that. They're summarizing everything for each other. And I think now, Christine, and we got the socials up here so y'all can follow their journey and all of that. And I am going to, turn it over to my colleague, Christina, but I want to thank you all again. And some of you I'll see tomorrow. I love you all, and I hope to see you soon in person.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's so wonderful.
Good to see everyone.
Great to see you guys.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much to our incredible panelists. And thank you to y'all in the chat. Thank you for being here. We were talking as a staff about how people are maybe a little tired of doing things online, but that really is the safest way right now. Thank you so much for tuning in. What are some of your best moments from this panel? Put them in the chat. There were so many beautiful nuggets of wisdom from this group. And like Terry said, you can check them out again tomorrow for some technical mini sessions, including EQ, time-based processing, an in-depth look at using compressors. And if you have any questions about any of these topics, it's going to go really quick. So we want you to drop them in that Padlet. So check it out, the networking Padlet. It's right there, wham.rock/network. And you can also put a picture of yourself, tell us where you're from, ask other questions related to what we're doing, and you'll find the program and share. You can also share resources. At this time, we want to take a minute to thank our sponsor, the Academy of Country Music. The Academy of Country Music is relentlessly committed to creating a more inclusive environment for all, from the boardroom to the stage. This includes a diverse membership that reflects a collection of both current and future leaders in the country music industry. Membership applications and renewals for the Academy open this fall, so please visit acmcountry.com/membership and sign up for a reminder. And please mark your calendars. The Academy of Country Music Honors will celebrate its 15th anniversary on Wednesday, August 24th, and you're invited. Be there as they recognize the winners of the ACM Studio Recording Awards, which celebrates the creators behind the music, as well as the recipients of their industry and special awards, in an unforgettable night of once-in-a-lifetime tributes and live performances from the stage of the historic Ryman Auditorium here in Nashville. Thanks so much to the Academy of Country Music. We appreciate your support of WAMCon. All right, folks, before we say goodnight, I hope you'll join us for the live DJ set on Zoom. I believe the link is in the chat, featuring one of our amazing staff members, DJ Kiki Doe. We've reached the end of our conference, but it's not too late to dance. Let's go. And we'll see you back here at 1 p.m. Central, 11 a.m. Pacific for some incredible workshops and panels. We've got the folks from Infrasonic. We have Amanda Davis and Brittany Werner on live sound. We have Laura Veltz talking about her songwriting process and so much more. We will see you there. Good night, everybody.